Hey everybody, you're watching Edified Productions, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Nikon D300s. This will be the beginning of a series of budget camera reviews I do, and I figured I'd start with the second to cheapest camera I'm going to be reviewing. The D300s is a camera that was released in 2009. It's what I consider to be Nikon's first modern DSLR, at least for crop sensors. And in general, it's a pretty alright camera. I got mine for $70 before shipping and taxes. After shipping and taxes, it was $90. And I reviewed it with the 35 to 70 f3.3 to 4.5. Because that was a cheap, readily available lens I got for $30. And after everything's said and done, it was $130 for this combo. And it's not too bad. This is a supplementary video to an article I wrote, which you can find up here. I go much further into detail and give many more, there's a gnat flying around, give many more image examples and comparisons to basically just give you as much detail as possible. The issue is that article was 5,000 words long, and not everybody has time for that. So that's why I'm making this YouTube video. It's going to be about 10-15 minutes long, so let's get right into it. So what was it like using a $130 camera? Not too bad, actually. The D300 has a bit of heft to it. It's got some weight, and it balances really, really well. Even with these cheaper, smaller lenses, like the 35 to 70, it's not too bad. And with my nicer Nikons, like my 105 f2, it still balanced really, really well, and it let me use some really slow shutter speeds that I can't use on my EOS R. That's what I daily with all of my normal photography. Usually I have to use much faster shutter speeds, but the weight and ergonomics of the D300s meant I could shoot slower. And that means lower ISOs or smaller f-stops, and that's always a plus. As far as autofocus goes, the D300s has a 51-point autofocus system with continuous AF tracking and subject detection. The subject detection is kind of It's okay if you don't have a complicated foreground in front of your subject. If you've just got a background, it's completely fine, but anything that's in the foreground that confuses it, it's not good at figuring out that it's not supposed to be focusing on that. So if you give it a chance, it's solid. The tracking is pretty okay. You can't track anything like too small because there's only 51 points, which I know it sounds like only 51, but when it comes to tracking, that's not a lot. So tracking isn't too good on small objects, and it's not good at tracking like specific points on one item. Like when I use tracking on my EOS R and I try to focus on the Canon logo, it will not track the Canon logo. It will try to jump focus to 50 million other points on the camera. It gets really, really confused when you do that. Besides that, autofocus is really fast, really accurate. I was able to get this shot of a bird that I just noticed was flying by really quickly. I just raised the camera, pointed, clicked the shutter, and shot. It was less than a quarter of a second, and it was completely accurate. So it's not a bad system. Now that shot was taken with my 80 to 200 f2.8 AFS. That is not a screw drive lens like the 35 to 70. The 35 to 70 took these photos though. And my 105 took this photo, which is also a screw drive lens, and it's still fast and accurate. They are very noisy though, if you know anything about screw drive lenses, or if you don't, they make a lot of noise. For example, doesn't sound like a lot. Let me get my 20 millimeter. This one makes a lot more noise. Yeah, they aren't exactly silent. Not good for if you are trying to get some quiet wildlife photos. But other than the noise, screw drive lenses focus very accurately, and it's never to the point where I consider it a problem. I don't use autofocus in my daily shooting, but I know enough about it, and I've used it enough to know what is garbage, and the D300S is not garbage. Now, moving on from autofocus, the D300S has an AI ring that allows you to use AI and AIS manual focus lenses, which I consider to be a massive bonus for anyone who's on a budget. Because, for example, this is my 35 f2. I got this for 50 bucks, and it's an outstanding lens, and it definitely a go-to for anyone who wants an older 35 with a lot of vignette. This is your lens to go to. It's also nice and sharp, so always a win. But the AI ring allows you to use and meter with those older lenses, and that's absolutely fantastic for anyone on a budget because you can get a lot of really nice, really unique lenses for really cheap. It also has the screw drive I mentioned before, which allows you to use all the cheaper AF series lenses and AFD lenses like the 50-1.8D or the 50-1.4D or the 22.8D or any other D lens or any other standard AF lens as well. Again, the autofocus is reasonably fast and reasonably accurate, and while I found myself almost always using autofocus for the 35-70 because the manual focus ring was just so terrible, it's actually this little plastic ring here. It's really bad. Impossible to focus with. While I found myself using auto with that lens all the time, stuff like my 35 where you have to use manual, the focus confirmation dots in the D300S Finder, they're pretty alright. I didn't run into many accuracy issues. And the D300S has live view. That's semi-useless. The frame rate's a little low. It's not very good. It's there if you're on a tripod and you need exact focus. You can zoom in almost down to the pixel and you can get really accurate focus that way. There is a video recording mode, and yeah, that's not good either. So, this is the video quality of the D300S. I'm going to cut my microphone. And this is the inbuilt microphone. It's awful. I don't think I've heard something this bad since last time I talked on a Nokia phone. So about 20 years ago. It's bad. It's bad. And this, get your ears ready, is the sound of the autofocus with a screwdriver lens in video mode. It's bad. It's bad. I have no idea if I'm in focus because it doesn't have an articulating screen and I can't use autofocus in video mode. The only way you get autofocus is by hitting the AF on button and hoping it gets it right because it's contrast detect autofocus. That's really awful because it doesn't use any like phase detection. It doesn't use anything that you would normally find in a sophisticated autofocus system. It just kind of guesses based off of the contrast of the pixels within its little zone. So it's not accurate. It's very slow. It hunts like crazy. And hopefully, as you can hear, it's very loud in the inbuilt microphone. So you never want to use this video mode if you need to use the internal microphone. And if you do, use manual focus, which will make, 1 second, which makes noise like this. I actually can't tell if you can hear that. But if you can, well, there's your manual mode. Yeah, it's not good. None of this is good. Okay, so that was a bit of a pain. One of the quirks I didn't notice before is you have to have the live view mode on tripod to be able to record and use autofocus. The one situation where I think you could use the D300S video is, say you're out and about taking some photos and you see a video or you see something where you need to take a video and you don't want to use your phone because you want bokeh or something and you have your 51.8. That is the one situation where you could feasibly, maybe, use the D300s video. It's low quality, it's janky, you have to go through menus to set frame rate, resolution, quality, and there's a 5-minute recording cap on your 720p video. 5 minutes. I have a hard enough time getting all my stuff done in my 30-minute cap on my EOS R. I cannot imagine trying to record everything with a 5-minute cap. And the microphone in it is absolutely atrocious. Alright, so you heard the inbuilt microphone and you saw the video recording quality. That was on my 20mm f2.8. There was no way I was going to be able to fit myself in frame in my little recording space with the 35-70. So that was with my 20. Now, what about image quality? It's not bad. I was actually quite impressed with such a cheap little camera. Again, if you want like in-depth comparisons to my EOS R, which sounds stupid, professional camera from 2016 versus cheap old DSLR from 2009. I know that doesn't sound fair, but the comparisons do show the capabilities of the sensor and the limitations of the sensor fairly well, I think. So if you want to see all that in-depth comparison, go to my article like I plugged at the beginning of this video. But I'm going to throw up some images. You can decide what you think of them on your own. Again, you're going to be looking through YouTube after it's decoded everything, after it's been downscaled to 1080p, 720p, whatever you're reviewing in. And that's, of course, going to basically make everything I say a completely moot point, or everything I show completely pointless. I am going to zoom in on a couple of these just so that you can see the details available. It's not bad. And I haven't mentioned the megapixels yet, and that's for a reason, because it doesn't matter. The D300s has 12 megapixels, and it utilizes all 12 of those completely fine. There is no issue whatsoever. And as you can see in this comparison, this is the sharpness difference between the two at 800 ISO using the same lens, my 55mm f2.8 AIS at f5.6. Super sharp lens, so that is not the limit here. The limit is the camera sensors. At 800 ISO, not bad. You can see a little more detail around the bolt labeled SSC for the EOS R, and on the D300S, it's a little iffy and soft, but it's not anything that will ruin your shots. The D300S has a ton of room to grow. The sensor is completely fine. The biggest limitation of the sensor is the underexposure performance, which the built-in meter is a good meter. It's very accurate when you use it with no exposure compensation, and it takes good images. The problem is I'm used to shooting at 2/3 stop underexposed on my EOS R for everything because it preserves highlight detail, and the EOS R is really good at bringing up shadows. Within about 2 days of shooting with the D300S, I realized I couldn't do that, and I have to use no exposure compensation. Once I figured that out, everything went completely fine. You can see in my comparisons right here, the underexposure performance is really poor. Here's your -3 stops, EOS R versus D300S. You can see massive color shifts, a lot of green, just overall not very good. And here is no exposure compensation, but with shadows brightened up +100 in Lightroom and highlights darkened -100 in Lightroom. So you can see highlight detail pretty much the same between the two. The EOS R doesn't have great highlight recovery with complex scenes, so it doesn't really surprise me. But the shadow recovery is not good on the D300S. You can see again the color shifts and a little bit of lack of detail in general. The usable ISO range of this camera is from 100, which is your pulled value. Its base ISO is 200. From 100 to 800, perfectly sharp, decently contrasty, not an excessive amount of noise. Just in general, it has good image quality up to about 800 ISO. Here you can again see 800 ISO comparisons for noise. And now I'm just going to throw up as quickly as possible a bunch of image samples from my time with the D300s. Some of these are from a car show I went to. Some of these are photos just from me being out and about. And some of these are photos from my hiking. Feel free to pause the video to look at the photos that you are interested in. I'm going to go through these very quickly just so I can get this review cut down to less than 20 minutes long. The whole point was to make this quicker than reading my 5,000 word article. It's a good showing. I'm really surprised for this amount of money, what you can do and what you can get. Obviously, it has its limitations. Of course it does. It's 13 years old. We gotta give it some slack here. But it does a lot for the money, and I think it's a great choice for anybody who only has like 150 bucks, maybe 200. At 200, you're kind of getting into Canon T2i territory, which is a significantly better camera, more resolution, EF lenses, all that cool stuff. But if you've got $150 and you want a solid camera that you can grow with, get more lenses for, and just kind of go about your journey with photography, the D300s is a good choice. You really couldn't go wrong with this camera. It's solid, it's built like a tank, it's got a great autofocus system, it takes lenses from the 1960s all the way up to 2020. You can't go wrong, and I think that's the greatest compliment I can possibly give the D300s in 2022. So, quick little recap. The D300s has a great autofocus system. It has a pretty awful video system, and it's got an awful video microphone, but the option is there if you happen to want it or need it. It takes SD cards like every modern DSLR should, and it's got great image quality. I say great. Yeah, I think it's great. From 100 ISO up to 800. It can be used up to 1600 and 3200 technically. And it also has a push up to 6400. But I don't even shoot 6400 ISO on my EOS R. And it's just as bad on the D300S. Well, obviously, much, much worse. It's really awful. Never go up there. Shoot 1600 at max, and even then you're getting a lot of noise. But great autofocus, good image quality, takes all the lenses. It's a great choice. So, again, if you want more in-depth comparisons and detail and image samples, go to my review up here in my article. This is supposed to be a supplementary for people who don't have 45 minutes to read 5,000 words. And thank you everybody for watching. This is the first in my series of budget camera reviews. My next will probably be, I'm debating on doing the T2i next or the Rebel XSi, which is going to be the cheapest camera I will review. And I'm also going to be doing some budget lens reviews. The next lens I have coming in is the Nikon AF 28-85, f3.5 to 4.5. And that's supposedly a much better lens than the 35-70, and it's about the same price. So we'll see how that goes. But thank you everybody for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you found it helpful. And if you're getting into photography and you have 150 bucks, D300S is a great choice, even in 2022. Thank you everybody for watching. I've said that 3 times now, but I really do mean it. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.